Hey guys, today I'm going to talk about junk fishing with a purpose, specifically in the fall. So, how many times have you gone out in the fall and maybe you catch fish here or there, but you can never really put anything together super consistent? And then as the day goes on, maybe the bite starts to fade a little bit and you just kind of spin out and lose control of your day. You start to feel like you've kind of thrown everything you have at them or gone through kind of your tactics and nothing's really working. And then you just end up with like a attitude or kind of a mental helplessness, and then maybe you look back at the end of the day after your trip and you realize that you kind of just ran around like a chicken with its head cut off and you didn't really put any strategy into what you were doing to help maximize your time on the water. So my goal today is to kind of show you how I go about it in the fall time, how I try and incorporate junk fishing, because that's kind of just what the fall time often brings. Is you got to be sporadic, you got to move around and try different things, but do it with a little bit of a strategy and try and keep the wheels on the bus so you feel like you're making progress and maybe you're chipping away a little bit at the puzzle of what the fish are doing, or what seems to be working well, but also staying fluid and trying different things. So we're going to look at Lake the Ozarks, but before we go any further, this video is brought to you by Hillermann and Associates Insurance and Wholesale Batteries. If you have any insurance needs, contact Tom or anybody on his team. They can do auto, home, business, life, anything you need insured. They take care of you, get you a good price, good deal, and have the proper insurance. Wholesale batteries, if you have a battery need for anything, bass boats, farm equipment, campers, commercial, even if you have a business or something, you have some sort of special battery situation, give these guys a call. They have a location in Kansas City and in St. Louis, and they are battery experts. They can help you with anything you have. Wonderful brands and stuff, and people that are just knowledgeable about the battery business. All right, so we'll dive into a cove here, and the way I'm going to kind of do this is I'm going to focus on this particular cove here because I feel like it has a lot of things to offer, kind of what you're looking for in the fall time, and then I'll kind of break it down and how you can apply this to other parts of the lake, but we'll just kind of keep one area to keep this simple, and then you can kind of build on it from there. But if you don't know what junk fishing is, it's kind of a term you're going to hear a lot of times in the fall, and it's basically you're going to have like an open tackle box. You can almost throw just about anything this time of the year and catch fish on it, and you can catch them in various areas. You can catch them out deep, you can catch them shallow on the flats, you can catch them in between on points, brush, rock changes, anything, anywhere, dirty water, clean water, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just a time of the year where the fish are in a transitional period again, and you can just kind of go through and pick up fish in different areas doing a lot of different things. So that's what junk fishing is. And then you might be wondering, well, why is that kind of a thing in the fall and not so much other times of the year? Well, the way I kind of look at it is, we'll say you have your time of the year where it's not so much a transition period. So we'll say that's winter, and we'll say summer. So those are the times of year when these fish, they'll get grouped up. They're kind of get moved into where they want to be, whether it's main lake or the shallower areas. They just get grouped up, and that's just kind of where they are. Now you have your transitional periods, so spring and fall, and that's where things can get a little bit more tricky sometimes. But the main difference to me between spring and fall is what the fish are geared toward. So in the spring, it is biological that these fish want to spawn. They want to move up to the shallow areas. That is ultimately, what they're going to do, and that's going to trump everything else within, the system. That's their main focus. That's what they're going to do. They're going to spawn. So I think that kind of makes them a little bit more predictable, where they're going to kind of like hang out in areas, a little bit deeper water adjacent to like the spawning flats and stuff. It just seems like they group up, and it's just a little bit easier to catch them in the spring, whereas in the fall, same deal, where the fish are in like a transitional period because you're going to have bait and stuff moving back that they can feed on, but it's also not something so important that the fish have to move to that area. If the fish have what they need where they're at, there's really no reason for them to move. So you're going to have water temperature that's cooling off, and you're going to have a large migration of shad that are going to move to the backs of the creeks, the flats and stuff, but you're also going to have plenty of shad that are going to be out on the main lake, or they may move partially back in some of these creeks and coves and stuff, and they can suspend out in these deeper pockets and stuff and move up in here and come back out. So it's not saying that all the shad are going to go from the main lake to the very back or from wherever, but you're going to have a very large congregation of fish that are going to end up in these shallow flats and push back in here, and then as you get, further into fall, closer to winter, they will go out into the guts of these creeks and stuff, and kind of just suspend out over the deeper water. So that is the reason, to me, that's how I look at it, of why fall fishing can be a little bit more tough and sporadic than spring, where the fish are just geared towards wanting to spawn. Okay, so we'll look at this cove here, and I will first talk about just breaking the cove down, or the creek, into sections. So what I mean is, we'll just say the first third, we'll just kind of call that like the main lake section. Let's just say that, because you're going to have access to your main lake points and stuff. You're going to have generally just that deeper water, the open water aspect to it. Then you can go, halfway back, or 2/3 of the way back, whatever you want to call it. And you're going to break into just the fish that are more transitional, maybe the ones that are actually following some of the shad and stuff that are going back, or have come out as the shad are making their way back. So that'll be another section. You're going to end up with more secondary points. You'll have channel swings and stuff in this section, leading back into some of the creeks. And then we'll break it into the last part, which will be just to say the back third of the creek. And that's where you're going to see like your last secondary points, and you're going to, generally have your large flats like these, very shallow. You're really going to get a lot of shad that are going to congregate in these, back of these shallow flats as we get later into fall. So we'll start on the main lake section here. Now, when I talked about the baits, you really have a ton of options. It's pretty much an open tackle box at this point. Throw really what you have confidence in, but I'll just kind of talk about some of the baits that I like to throw, or what I would approach in this, what I would call main lake section. So in the main lake section, when I am doing this, I'm going to start by looking for wind generally, and be looking at it to be blowing on like these main lake points here, hitting this little secondary point that's got shallow taper out here that comes out a little bit underwater. But looking for that, and I'm first going to start off with moving baits, because in the fall I like to move. I like to fish an area rather quickly and just stay on the move, because I feel like I do better whenever I am moving areas a little bit instead of just soaking one area at a time. Now, if I'm catching multiple fish there, with the moving baits, and it slows down a little bit, well, then I may run through there with a jig or a bottom style bait, or something that's just a little bit slower, and see if I can get some more bites in there. But I feel like I need to have a little bit of action to keep me around in that area, if that makes sense, for me to kind of comb through that. So in this instance, topwater would be big for me. I'm a big fan of a whopper plopper or a buzz bait, because it's such a moving bait. If you want to slow down just a little bit more, you can throw a spook and stuff alongside these docks is good. These are over, very deep water. You get the wind blown in on them, or you can go up behind them, depending on your rock style here. If you get some of the bigger chunk rock and stuff, that can be really good time in the fall as well. In all of this too, I'm looking for shad up on these banks or around these docks. That's going to, be something that's going to help me stay in that area a little bit longer, or it's going to give me a little more confidence to kind of slow down through that just a little bit with those moving baits. But yeah, your spinner baits and stuff are good around these docks as well. If you are wanting to get your bait around the dock in relation to fish suspended around that, I'm going to throw usually like a 1/2 ounce spinner bait. If I want it to be related more to the bottom, a little bit deeper, then I'm going to throw like a 3/4 to maybe a 1 ounce spinner bait to keep that bait a little bit closer to the bottom, versus being up around the floats on the docks. Your jerk bait comes into play a lot on these dock corners and on the front edges and stuff as well. You can start throwing your A-rigs, your chatterbait. You can swim a worm by it. You can throw your glide baits. Crankbaits come into play. Like I said, it's really about an open tackle box. You can throw kind of what you have confidence in and experiment with it. But how I kind of approach like the timing aspect of this, and how I keep moving and keep covering water, is I'm going to try this little main lake section here and give it about an hour. And if I kind of fish this little loop here, and it might not even take me an hour, I'm going to hit what I think is the key areas, key spots with, a rotation of baits, keep it moving, keep mixing it up a little bit. And if I don't get a bite, or I don't get, at least catch some fish, or I have something that, makes me interested in that, then I'm going to pick up and move. I'm going to say, okay, I didn't do really well on this this main lake section. So I'm going to move down to my next little creek or something, or cove that I like, that seems like it has a decent, halfway or 2/3 of the way in area. So let's just say we pick this cove, for example. So I'm going to come in here, and instead of focusing on this main lake portion now, I'm going to X that off for right now. Now I'm going to focus on like this mid section. So I'm going to come in here. I might go and fish this long tapering point. Look for some brush piles in here or something. Fish that with your moving baits. You can throw your jigs in there, your bottom style baits, whatever you want if you find brush or something. But generally, like I said, I'm going to get my moving baits first, see if there's any action, see if there's anything I like, and then I might soak through that a little bit with a little bit slower baits. So you get plenty of good underwater points here. Got some good channel swings coming up on these two. So looking for shad out here, looking for anything that's telling me there's life, looking for brush piles, whatever, and kind of focus on that first. And I might poke in and fish some of these docks on these little secondary points here. This one also got a little channel swing that comes up, so I might come in and hit this a little bit and might roll on out and try on this side too a little bit. Same style. I want to be mixing up my baits and going through the cycle, just trying to get things going and see what the fish are telling me, where I'm getting bites, seeing what is working, what's not working. Okay, so say I do all that, maybe I catch a few fish, but it's not what I like. Okay, so from that point, I can either go all the way in the back of this cove, because hey, I did catch some fish in here, so I can go all the way to the back of this and basically do the same thing, work these flats, work some of these steeper banks back here. You can see this side's pretty flat over here. This side's just a little bit steeper, so this is like your last little steep bank leading into the flat. So I might try some of that with a jerk bait, throw a jig and stuff on that if I want to slow down a little bit. Any way you look at it, whatever confidence baits you want to use, whatever you like, might work on that for a little bit. But maybe I try that for just a minute, or I feel like, I don't know if this cove is what I'm feeling, or I want to move just a little bit more and try a little bit of a different water. Okay, well then I'm going to pull out of this cove and maybe try and find something a little bit similar, something not too far away. So let's just say we pick this creek here, go into I think North Buck Creek. Yep, that's what that one's called. So come out of here, maybe we'll say go to this creek, and now I'm going to focus on the back third of this. So now I might not start until maybe in this case it's got this nice underwater point. So I might start here looking for brush pile, and then work my way in. Then I might just go straight to the back in these flat areas, these shallower docks and stuff, and work my way out for anything that I like. But at least I feel like at that point I am covering water. I'm not in the same cove, because fall can definitely be a time where you can be in a section of the lake and it's just not happening. You can have like the water could be turning over a little bit, or it's just not happening there, and you just need to get out to a different section. So at least I feel like I am moving, like I'm changing a few things at once. I'm not just in one cove and what could be a dead spot and trying the main lake halfway back, all the way back. And if none of that really works that well, then I'm not out of a bunch of time spent in like one dead zone. Basically, I kind of tried the main lake here. I might hop over and try, halfway or 2/3 the way back, however you want to, break that up depending on the creek size kind of. And then, move a little bit more and go to the very back of the creek. That's what I guess makes sense to me. And you can do that on a little bit more of a drastic scale if you want. You can go from, say we went here on the main lake, and then let's just say we went down here and we started say halfway back, and then we didn't really like that, or we did okay. Now we want to try a little something different. Maybe we'll go a little further and try the back of these creeks. So it's kind of up to you a little bit to decide how far you want to go, but I feel like you do need to be a little bit careful. You don't necessarily want to say, okay, well, I did, okay, let's just say halfway back here, and then run, way down here. So say you run to Lynn Creek and try and totally replicate the same thing, because what's happening down here, like this could be turning over and stuff, where the water, on the lower end is generally a little more stable. So I try and keep it within a reasonable realm of where I'm at. And then if nothing's happening, in any of those, like I said, we start here, and just say there, and then, okay, none of that's happening. Well, then I'm going to make a change, whether I might run up the Gravois and try something, or just run further down the lake and get to what I would consider just a total new section. So just a few other things to maybe touch on is I'll just use this cove as a little bit of an example here. So you've got the shallow flats and stuff, like I talked about. Like, you get a lot of bait that congregates in here. So when you get in these areas, you can oftentimes catch them open water over this. You can maybe sometimes find some sneaky brush piles that are suspended out in the guts of these a little bit, or around some of these docks. You could throw square bills, like the plastic, like a super fluke works really well, just like a weightless super fluke, jigging it around the flats and stuff, around the front of these docks, especially if wind is pushing in here. Like, you get on the front edges of these, bass will stack up on those a lot. You can catch a ton of fish doing that, have a lot of fun. Some other things that are maybe a little bit sneakier, or just something that's not just like, oh, just go to the flat and fish there, is when I was talking about those steeper banks. So like, here is a steeper bank leading up to like this little flat, or you could even say this got a little secondary point here too, but you have this whole area, and this, just say, is kind of like your steeper bank. So as you get these cooler nights, as the water does start to cool off and these fish are in these flats, this is where they're gonna end up, as this really shallow water, it warms up very quickly during the day and it cools off very quickly at night. So if those fish want stability, they go to the last 45-degree bank close to that area. That is something that you're probably going to hear people talk about. You can throw your rock crawlers, wiggle warts, stuff like that. You can throw jigs down it. You can honestly, like I said, throw what you have confidence in. I like to throw the moving baits again. But beyond that, you have another channel swing here. This one is a little bit, if I can zoom out just a little bit here for you. I'm having trouble with my trackpad, but it comes in. It kind of swings on this side here. You can see all these contour lines real close. It's a little bit flatter over here. Comes up on that bank, and then it cuts across, and it comes up to this side right here. And then you can see it kind of comes back out right here as you get these flatter lines. So in this area here is where I would expect to see some sort of rock change. Now, the one thing you have to keep in mind is you can tell that this is a little bit off the bank here if you went out there and actually looked at it. So you may see a rock change actually up on the bank that kind of signals that, but you also may not. So you may need to side scan past that. If you side scan this or down image or whatever you want to use electronics wise, you may notice that when you get in this area, you could see a pretty decent rock change underwater, or some sort of a bottom change, and that can actually hold a lot of fish too. Just a simple bottom change. There may or may not be brush there. Sometimes it's beneficial. Sometimes it actually hurts to have brush on a natural change like that. But that is just like another thing to keep in mind as you're working in the backs of these areas, or you're working your way in some of these coves. So some key takeaways from all this is, I like to look for wind if wind is available. I'm looking for the wind pushing in on a bank, pushing in on a creek or something. That seems to usually get those fish fired up a little more, get them a little bit more active. I'm generally looking for bait, especially in the fall. Just be warned though that you will get to a point where there's going to be so much bait in the back of these creeks. There's going to be bait just lining a lot of this, and then you're going to go, well, now what do I do? Well, you're going to be around all that bait, and that can help you, but it also sometimes I think it can hinder you a little bit, because there's just so much food available, and it's like, well, I got to get them to eat my bait when they're surrounded by bait. So a lot of that is just covering water, keeping your bait wet, and getting it in front of as many fish as you can. And my final piece of advice would be, don't get stuck just in one section of the lake if it's not panning out for you. And if you feel like the day is starting to unravel, starting to get away from you a little bit, you can try and collect that back in a little bit by just moving to a new area. You don't have to go super far, but just move a little bit to a new area and kind of restart the process a little bit. Start with something that you're confident in, and start in an area where you see some shad, and kind of build off of from there. That usually can at least get you some bites, because it's something that you should be pretty proficient at using and have confidence in, and get that bait in front of some of those fish in those areas that you see shad and stuff, and you should be able to at least pick up some fish in that, and that'll kind of get your confidence back up and get you squared back away and put the wheels back on the bus a little bit. That's what I like to call it, because I know there's definitely been times when I have gone out. I've learned a lot over the years just fall fishing. It's kicked my butt a lot, and then I feel like once I started to implement a little bit of a better strategy, I would guess you would call it, to junk fishing, instead of literally just going out and running around like a chicken with its head cut off, I seem to have a lot better success. So hopefully this makes sense to you, or you can kind of build upon this a little bit or adjust it a little bit to maybe what fits your fishing style particularly. But for me, like I said, I like to be on the move. I like to use those moving baits first. And then if I have something I see that interests me, then I will slow down and I'll pick up, the slower bottom baits and kind of work through those areas with that. So good luck out there, guys. Thanks for watching. Hopefully it helped you. And we'll have some more videos out for you soon.